NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has hardly opened its eyes, and the universe is new. More mysterious, more beautiful than humanity's dreams.
She was depicted as the Shivalinga, as kind of a spherical column, the flaming pillar that is the cosmic axis of the universe.
NASA, the organization everyone trusts to reveal the deepest secrets of space,
2 weeks ago, NASA made history once again.
has recently admitted something that seems straight out of ancient mythology. For centuries, we've looked at ancient texts from cultures around the world and written them off as mere myths, stories of gods, flying chariots, and impossible technologies. But what if these stories were actually cryptic blueprints for technologies we're only beginning to understand now? What if the Hindu texts, which are thousands of years old, hold knowledge that's so advanced it could have come straight from a spacefaring civilization? Get ready for a jaw-dropping journey that links ancient wisdom to modern science in a way you never expected. The Hindu texts and shocking revelation from NASA. If you think science and ancient history belong in separate worlds, then think again. Imagine NASA, the very scientists and engineers we rely on for our understanding of the universe, admitting that some of the things written in these ancient texts have startling similarities to the science we're uncovering today. The ancient Hindu texts, including the Vedas, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana, are filled with tales of gods, divine beings, and supernatural events. For many centuries, these stories have been seen as nothing more than myths, allegories passed down to explain the unexplainable. Gods riding in flying chariots, advanced warfare techniques, and mystical devices that could destroy entire cities were considered fantastical, dreamlike stories from another time. But with much research, science, and technology, a surprising truth begins to emerge. These texts, which date back thousands of years, are now being revisited with a new perspective. Could they hold the secrets to advanced technology and knowledge that modern science is just beginning to uncover? One of the most famous and debated sections of Hindu texts is the Mahabharata.
Scientific evidence based on astronomy for the dating of an ancient Indian text called the Mahabharata.
Particularly the descriptions of the Great War, the Kurukshetra War. In this battle, the warriors used weapons that were described as having a power so destructive it could obliterate entire cities in a flash. These weapons, often described as Brahmastras or Agneya weapons, are not unlike what we understand today as nuclear weapons. Could these stories be more than just exaggerations? In fact, many of the ancient scriptures describe technologies that seem impossible for their time. One specific part of the Mahabharata describes a flying chariot called the Vimana, capable of taking off from the ground, navigating the air, and even reaching space. The descriptions of these crafts' abilities, including their speed and maneuvers, seemed so similar to the descriptions of modern spacecrafts that many were left speechless. But these texts weren't just about fantastical inventions. They also contained deep philosophical insights about the nature of the universe, time, and space. Concepts like infinite cycles of time, the Kalachakra, and the idea of multiple worlds within a single universe weren't just abstract ideas. They were hints at the complex cosmic structure that modern scientists are now exploring through quantum physics and cosmology. This blend of advanced technology and philosophical wisdom is what makes the Hindu texts so perplexing. Could they have contained actual scientific principles that scientists are only beginning to understand now, after centuries of technological advancements? In 2022, during a study of ancient astronomical records, NASA scientists made a shocking discovery. They found that some ancient texts, specifically from the Hindu scriptures, contained descriptions of celestial phenomena that are similar to what we are now observing with modern telescopes and satellites.
There's a whole lot of fascinating celestial objects and phenomena that can only be observed in the bright light of day.
The most striking of these similarities comes from the Mahabharata, an epic that, according to some experts, describes celestial events in a way that mirrors the current scientific understanding of supernova explosions and solar system formations. Scientists at NASA were left astonished as they compared these ancient descriptions with the data obtained from space observatories. What was even more surprising was the precise detail with which these ancient texts described the movements of celestial bodies. The exact positions of stars and planets mentioned in the Vedas and the Puranas seemed to align perfectly with modern-day astronomical observations, the mind-blowing parallels between ancient knowledge and modern science. As NASA's team continued to explore the connections between ancient Hindu scriptures and modern science, they discovered something that left them even more amazed. The descriptions of the universe, its structure, and even the very nature of time in the Hindu texts align with scientific discoveries that were made centuries later. It's as though the ancient texts were describing the cosmos in a way that only now, with our advanced technology, can we truly appreciate. In the Vedas, which are ancient sacred texts of Hinduism, there's a detailed account of the movement of stars and planets. One of the most fascinating parts of these texts is the description of the cosmic dance of the stars. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest texts in human history, mentions how stars move in intricate patterns, constantly shifting and shaping the destiny of the universe. Scientists have only recently confirmed that the stars and galaxies are indeed moving in complex, interconnected ways, influenced by the gravitational forces of each other. They describe these movements in modern astronomy as part of cosmic dynamics.
Cosmos, which rotates every 25,000 years or so.
What's unbelievable is that the Vedas described these cosmic movements thousands of years ago, long before we had any telescopes or instruments to observe them. NASA's researchers were stunned when they saw this alignment. The ancient texts spoke of an interconnected cosmic system, with stars and planets constantly in motion, influencing each other's paths. This wasn't just poetic or abstract language. It seemed to be describing a scientific reality that we are only now beginning to fully understand. It's as if the ancient sages had an intimate understanding of the cosmic forces at work, using spiritual knowledge to map the universe in ways that align with modern astronomy. Another mind-blowing discovery lies in the Hindu concept of time. According to Hinduism, time is not a straight line as we typically view it. Instead, it's cyclical, revolving in eternal cycles known as yugas. There are 4 yugas: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Each yuga represents a different stage of existence, and together they form an infinite cycle of creation and destruction. Now, what's truly fascinating is that modern physics, especially in the realm of cosmology, has begun to suggest that time might not be linear at all. In fact, many theoretical physicists propose that time could operate in cyclical patterns, much like the yugas described in Hindu texts. NASA has even explored the concept of a cyclical universe, where universes are born, exist, and then collapse, only to be reborn again in a continuous loop. This concept is strikingly similar to the Hindu understanding of time as being endless and governed by cycles. In Hindu cosmology, there's a fascinating concept known as Brahmanda, which translates to the cosmic egg. It is described as the source of the entire universe, a singular point from which everything emerged. The idea that the universe came from a single point is an uncanny parallel to the Big Bang theory in modern cosmology.
The Big Bang was a name given to this idea that the universe started in this one primordial explosion.
According to the Big Bang theory, the universe began from an infinitely small point, a singularity, before expanding into the vast cosmos we see today. When NASA scientists looked at the Hindu texts describing the Brahmanda, they couldn't help but draw comparisons to the singularity from which the universe began. These ancient texts were talking about the very beginning of the universe, long before scientists came up with a theory to explain it. What's even more astonishing is that the Brahmanda is described as a self-contained system, much like the universe we live in, where everything is interconnected and dependent on one another for balance. NASA's findings revealed that the universe, in many ways, operates as a closed system, governed by the laws of physics that maintain equilibrium and harmony. The similarities between the ancient Hindu description of the universe's birth and modern scientific theory are staggering. Could the ancients have known about the Big Bang before it was discovered by scientists? One of the most intriguing aspects of Hindu texts is the mention of Vimanas, which are flying chariots that some believe were used by the gods to travel through the heavens. These descriptions, found in texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana, tell of machines that could fly, maneuver through the sky, and even travel through space. In fact, the Vimanas are said to be capable of interplanetary travel. Some interpretations of the texts suggest that these chariots were equipped with weapons and could engage in battle in the skies, possibly even fighting battles in outer space. NASA's investigation into these texts raised a fascinating question. Could these ancient texts be describing advanced spacecraft technology? While many dismiss the idea of gods flying in spaceships, some researchers argue that the Vimanas might have been ancient craft, described in such a way that their true nature was hidden in the realm of mythology. Interestingly, NASA has been experimenting with aerospace technology that mirrors some of the Vimana descriptions, including energy propulsion systems that could potentially allow us to travel through space in ways that we haven't yet fully explored. What NASA discovered next. As NASA's team continued digging deeper into the ancient Hindu scriptures, the discoveries became even more mind-boggling. These texts, which were written long before modern science existed, seem to contain secrets about the universe that only today's technology can help us fully understand. What they found next was shocking and added a whole new layer to the mystery. One of the most elusive concepts in modern physics is the unified field theory.
The unified field theory is, so let's break down that sentence, because that's what I did. First of all, electromagnetism needed to be, deconstructed.
The idea that everything in the universe, from gravity to electromagnetism, is governed by a single force. Scientists have been searching for this theory of everything for decades, trying to connect the dots between different forces in nature. What NASA found, however, was that the ancient Hindu texts already seemed to possess an understanding of this unified field theory. The Upanishads, a collection of sacred texts, describe a concept known as Brahman, which is essentially the underlying force that connects all things in the universe. Brahman is described as a universal energy that pervades everything, from the smallest particle to the vast expanse of the cosmos. It's often referred to as the absolute reality, the source of all creation. This concept bears an incredible resemblance to modern ideas in physics, where scientists believe there is a single force or energy that binds the entire universe together. NASA researchers were stunned. It seemed like these ancient sages had already grasped the idea of a unified force that connects everything, long before modern scientists even had the tools to prove it. Now, let's talk about something that has puzzled scientists for centuries: black holes. These mysterious, invisible regions in space are known for their immense gravitational pull, which is so strong that not even light can escape it. Black holes were first theorized by scientists in the 18th century, but it wasn't until recently that we were able to detect them with advanced telescopes and instruments. Interestingly, Hindu scriptures appear to describe something strikingly similar to what we now understand as black holes. The Mahabharata and Vishnu Purana both contain references to a dark, mysterious force that exists at the heart of the universe. It's described as an invisible force that pulls everything towards it and consumes everything in its path. This force is said to be located at the center of the cosmos, much like how black holes are located at the centers of galaxies. NASA's researchers were absolutely fascinated by these descriptions. Could the ancient texts have been describing black holes thousands of years ago? The more they explored, the more it seemed that these dark, powerful forces were mentioned in Hindu cosmology in ways that closely mirrored modern theories of black holes. What happens now? With these new findings in mind, it's time for us to ask, how much more is hidden in the ancient wisdom of cultures long past? What other secrets could humanity unlock if we continue to explore the intersection of science, spirituality, and history? This might just be the beginning of an era where the gap between science and ancient knowledge begins to close, creating a future where we embrace both the mysteries of the universe and the wisdom passed down to us by our ancestors. The implications are endless, and the possibilities are mind-blowing. While you might have heard about how gory the Vietnam War was,
these are the images known to the world that marked the end of the Vietnam War. Saigon, capital of South Vietnam, fell into forces of the Communist North on the 30th of April 1975.
you won't believe the creepy things that were considered normal during the time of the war. These disturbing practices and incidents have gone down in history as some of the worst to have ever been recorded. If you're curious to find out, join us as we reveal the top creepy things that were normal during the Vietnam War. The Cam Nay Massacre. The Cam Nay Massacre was a tragic and devastating incident that occurred on August 5, 1965, during the Vietnam War. U.S. Marines burned down the village of Cam Nay, killing civilians, destroying homes, and displacing many residents. You might be wondering how it all happened. Well, it all started in a small village in the Quang Nam province of South Vietnam called Cam Nay. The area was a stronghold of the Viet Cong, and the U.S. military had been conducting operations in the region to root out the insurgents. On August 5, 1965, a unit of U.S. Marines from the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, entered Cam Nay as part of a search and destroy mission. The Marines claimed they were looking for Viet Cong fighters, but the villagers insisted they were civilians. The Marines proceeded to burn down the village, using flamethrowers and other incendiary devices. Many homes were destroyed, and civilians were killed or injured in the process. Estimates of civilian casualties vary, but it's reported that at least one baby was killed, 3 women were wounded, and many others were displaced. The incident was widely reported by the media, including CBS News correspondent Morley Safer, who was embedded with the Marines. Safer's report, which aired on August 5, 1965, showed the Marines burning down the village and highlighted the civilian casualties. The Cam Nay Massacre sparked widespread outrage and condemnation in the United States. If you think this took too many lives, wait until you hear the next one. Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a herbicide used by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War to destroy crops, foliage, and trees that provided cover for enemy forces. The herbicide was contaminated with a toxic chemical called dioxin, which has had severe and long-lasting health and environmental effects. Agent Orange was a mixture of 2 herbicides, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T, contaminated with dioxin.
What do you get when you mix 2,4,5-T acid and 2,4-D acid? You get a powerful herbicide that the United States military used during the Vietnam War, and one that's been tied to serious health problems for the people exposed to it.
The U.S. military sprayed millions of gallons of Agent Orange and other herbicides over 4.5 million acres of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia between 1961 and 1971. The spraying of Agent Orange destroyed forests, crops, and ecosystems, leading to widespread environmental damage and loss of biodiversity. Exposure to Agent Orange has been linked to various health problems, including cancer, such as Hodgkin's disease, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, prostate cancer. It has also been linked to birth defects like heart defects, cleft palate, and limb abnormalities, neurological disorders such as Parkinson's disease, peripheral neuropathy, and reproductive problems like infertility and miscarriage. Millions of Vietnamese civilians and thousands of U.S. soldiers were exposed to Agent Orange during the war. Many have suffered from health problems and birth defects as a result. The U.S. government has provided some compensation and assistance to affected Vietnamese civilians and U.S. veterans, but there is still a lot of work to be done to clean up contaminated areas and provide support to those affected. Tiger cages. Tiger cages were small, cramped, and often inhumane prison cells used by the government of South Vietnam to detain and torture suspected communists, dissidents, and civilians during the Vietnam War. These cages were typically made of concrete or metal and were designed to hold a single prisoner. Conditions in the tiger cages were harsh and often brutal. Prisoners were subjected to overcrowding as many of them were often held in the same small cage, leading to unsanitary conditions and the spread of diseases. The cages were often poorly ventilated, leading to stifling heat and humidity. Prisoners were also often denied access to basic sanitation facilities, leading to the spread of diseases. It gets worse. Prisoners were frequently subjected to physical abuse, including beatings, electric shocks, and other forms of torture. They were often subjected to psychological abuse, including isolation, sensory deprivation, and manipulation. The use of tiger cages was widespread in South Vietnam.
They're called the tiger cages. They were used to house what they called the most difficult prisoners, those who were causing the most trouble for the South Vietnamese.
With estimates suggesting that tens of thousands of people were imprisoned in these conditions. Many prisoners were held without trial or due process, and some were imprisoned for years without being charged with a crime. The existence of the tiger cages was first exposed in the early 1970s, and it sparked widespread outrage and condemnation. The U.S. government, which had been providing financial and military support to the government of South Vietnam, was criticized for its role in enabling the use of these inhumane prison conditions. In 1970, two U.S. congressmen, Augustus Hawkins and William Anderson, visited South Vietnam and witnessed the tiger cages firsthand. They subsequently reported on the atrocities they had seen, which helped to raise awareness about the issue and put pressure on the U.S. government to take action. The use of tiger cages was eventually phased out in the mid-1970s, but the legacy of these inhumane prison conditions continues to be felt today. Children of the dust. This refers to the thousands of children born to Vietnamese women and American soldiers during the Vietnam War. These children faced significant challenges and hardships due to their mixed heritage and the social and cultural context in which they were born. Children of the dust were born to Vietnamese mothers and American fathers, often as a result of romantic relationship encounters between U.S. soldiers and Vietnamese women. Many of these children were abandoned by their American fathers, who often did not acknowledge or support their children. Vietnamese society also rejected these children, viewing them as illegitimate or bastards. Children of the dust were also stigmatized and discriminated against in Vietnamese society. They were often denied education, employment, and social services, and were subjected to verbal and physical abuse. Many children of the dust grew up in poverty, living in slums or on the streets. They often had limited access to education, healthcare, and other basic services. In the 1970s and 80s, many children of the dust were adopted by American families or emigrated to the United States as refugees, but this process was often marked by trauma, separation from family and culture, and difficulties adapting to a new country. In recent years, there has been growing recognition of the experiences and challenges faced by the children of the dust.
Some are prospering, while others are still trapped in the cycle of poverty, devoid of education, in poor health, without money, and lacking social position.
Efforts have been made to provide support, resources, and reconciliation to these individuals and their families. Tiger Force atrocities. These atrocities refer to the war crimes committed by the Tiger Force Unit, a reconnaissance platoon of the U.S. Army's 1st Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment, during the Vietnam War. The unit operated in the Central Highlands of Vietnam from 1965 to 1967. Some of the atrocities committed by Tiger Force include killing unarmed Vietnamese civilians, including women and children, scalping and beheading people for sport or as trophies, cutting off ears and other body parts as souvenirs, burning villages and crops, and torturing and mistreating prisoners. These atrocities were documented through eyewitness accounts, military records, and investigations conducted by the U.S. Army, but despite the evidence, none of the soldiers involved in these atrocities were prosecuted or punished. The Tiger Force atrocities are widely regarded as one of the most egregious examples of war crimes committed by U.S. forces during the Vietnam War. They highlight the darker aspects of human nature and the devastating consequences of war on civilians and soldiers alike. The next one on our list will have you wondering why it was considered normal during the Vietnam War. Torture in the Hanoi Hilton. The Hanoi Hilton was a prison camp in North Vietnam where American prisoners of war, commonly called POWs, were held and subjected to torture, starvation, and physical abuse during the Vietnam War. The prison was officially known as Hoa Lo Prison, but it became notorious among American POWs as the Hanoi Hilton. American POWs were subjected to various forms of torture, including beatings, kickings, and other forms of physical abuse were common. POWs were fed meager rations, often consisting of rice and vegetables, leading to malnutrition and starvation. POWs were even often held in solitary confinement, leading to psychological distress and isolation. POWs were denied sleep or subjected to prolonged periods of wakefulness. POWs were subjected to propaganda, lies, and manipulation to break their spirits and extract false confessions. The treatment of American POWs at the Hanoi Hilton was widely condemned, and it became a major issue during the Paris peace talks. The North Vietnamese government eventually released the POWs in 1973, following the signing of the Paris Peace Accords. The Hanoi Hilton.
The fall of Saigon, ending the Vietnam War on this date 48 years ago. Those times evoke all kinds of memories, among them the prison POWs called the Hanoi Hilton.
Was eventually demolished in the 1990s, but it is still remembered for its brutality and mistreatment of American POWs during the Vietnam War. Operation Wandering Soul. Operation Wandering Soul was a psychological warfare operation conducted by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War. The operation involved broadcasting fake voices of dead Vietnamese soldiers, along with eerie sounds and music, to demoralize and intimidate the North Vietnamese Army, also called NVA, and Viet Cong or VC forces. The operation was based on the Vietnamese belief in the concept of wandering souls, which holds that the spirits of the dead must be properly buried and honored to rest in peace. If not, they are doomed to wander the earth, seeking peace. The U.S. military exploited this belief by creating fake radio broadcasts that simulated the voices of dead Vietnamese soldiers, calling out to their comrades and warning them of the consequences of continuing to fight. The broadcasts were designed to create a sense of unease and fear among the enemy forces and to undermine their morale. The operation was carried out by the 6th Psychological Operations Battalion, which used loudspeakers, aircraft, and radio broadcasts to disseminate the fake messages. The broadcasts were often accompanied by eerie sounds, such as howling wind, creaking trees, and mournful music, to create a haunting atmosphere. While the effectiveness of Operation Wandering Soul is difficult to quantify, it is believed to have had some impact on the enemy's morale, particularly among the more superstitious and traditional elements of the NVA and VC forces.
The North Vietnamese Army, or the NVA, and the Viet Cong, which were formerly the Viet Minh. I'm just going to kind of go through a brief history of each little group and kind of what the differences and obviously similarities were.
But the operation was not without controversy, and some have questioned its ethical implications and potential long-term effects on the Vietnamese people. Ear necklaces. During the Vietnam War, some American soldiers collected ears as trophies from the bodies of dead Vietnamese soldiers or civilians. These ears were often dried, preserved, and worn as necklaces or kept as souvenirs. This practice was not widespread, but it was documented in several instances, particularly among certain units, such as the Tiger Force. The collection of ears as trophies was often seen as a way for soldiers to prove their bravery or to commemorate their kills, but this practice is widely considered to be a war crime and a grave violation of human dignity. It is also a stark reminder of the dehumanizing effects of war and the brutalization of soldiers. The wearing of ear necklaces was also seen as a form of psychological warfare, intended to intimidate and demoralize the enemy. But it gave the U.S. military a bad rep and contributed to the growing anti-war sentiment back home. You should know, though, that the collection of body parts as trophies is a violation of the Geneva Conventions and is considered a war crime. The U.S. military has since condemned this practice and emphasized the importance of treating all individuals, including enemy combatants, with dignity and respect, contributing to the substantial but often unrecorded gold yields. This discovery in Luhihi led to a gold rush, with thousands flocking to the site, causing strain on the local community. South Kivu's minister, Venant Barum Muhigirwa, ordered a halt to all mining activities to manage the situation. Such events, coupled with a recent UN report, suggest that gold may not be as rare as perceived. Regular discoveries, like the 5,000 tons found in a Silesian village, reveal that large gold deposits frequently go unreported, challenging the idea of gold scarcity and highlighting the significant, albeit hidden, contributions to the global gold supply. Could it be that these ancient sages knew things we are only just beginning to understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen and you will enjoy it.